Welcome to today's First Chesapeake Chats, sponsored by Newport News Shipbuilding Session. I am Lizzie Nguyen, a First Chesapeake FTC and FRC alumna and an alumni ambassador sponsored by Booz Allen Hamilton, and I am here to introduce the First Chesapeake Chats. I would like to thank this session's sponsor, Newport News Shipbuilding, for making this chat possible. Just some housekeeping, we will let the speaker present and then open up for discussion questions later on if there is time. Feel free to put your questions in the comments throughout the chat and we will try to get them all. A quick reminder, the volunteer registration system is open for volunteers with our first FRC district event of the season in just 2 weeks. We again have remote roles available, like Judge, making it easy to support our STEM community. Please visit our volunteer webpage at www.firstchesapeake.org/volunteer for instructions and links to register. Newport News Shipbuilding is looking to hire recent high school grads and high school seniors. No experience is required. See more details on the First Chesapeake Alumni Job Postings webpage. So let's get started. Today, we're going to discuss what is pre-inspection and why it is essential. At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, the lovely Kate McBrien, who is First Chesapeake's lead robot inspector. We are so glad to have you here today, Kate, and I will turn it over to you for your presentation.
Perfect. I'm glad to be here. Perfect. Okay, so let's just start right off the bat with pre-inspections. What are they and why are they important? So go ahead and go to do I have control of the slides? I do. Perfect. So first off, pre-inspection versus self-inspection, what is the difference? There's very little difference. It's just who's doing what. So when we say pre-inspections, it's usually coming to a week 0 event and having a robot inspector doing it there. Or it could also be a mentor doing it. It doesn't matter because at the competition, you still have to go through inspection. So whether it's a pre-inspection of going through having one of us do it or you guys doing it yourselves, it's the same checklist. It's the same things you're going to be looking for. So really the only difference between these two is the experience of the person doing it or the team affiliation. So if one of your mentors is a robot inspector, pre-inspection, self-inspection is identical. As I said, at the competition, you do have to get re-inspected. And this is going to be pre-inspections or self-inspections. I'm going to use the terms interchangeably, are going to be very important this year because for the one-day event, we're going to be using the abbreviated inspection checklist. And I'll show that in a second. So first off, where is this inspection checklist? The inspection checklist is listed on the website right underneath the game where you find the game manuals, inspection checklist, and there's the abbreviated one. So you can see which one you want to use for your self-inspection and pre-inspections, and then which ones we'll be using for the one-day events. So your robot will be checked out. So with this, you will have answers to all of the questions we are going to ask. So you don't have to be surprised. This isn't a surprise pop quiz. Here are the answers, or here are the questions, and the answers are in the rule books. You got them. Okay, so I'm trying to go through this very quickly because a typical inspection should take about 20 to 30 minutes. The abbreviated one's a little bit longer. So my goal is to actually go through a lot of these things on what the inspection checklist looks like so you can do them yourselves. Because that's really the big benefit of what this is. So you guys can go into the competition knowing you have a legal robot, so you don't have to stress out that the inspections are a big deal. So things to look for. If you're looking on the one on the left, that's the abbreviated one. That's the one we're going to be using at one-day competitions. Hint, if you find the first line to be, and I don't know if you can read that, but the first line is, have you completed a self-inspection or pre-inspection? If you're looking at that one, it means for your self-inspection, it means you're looking at the wrong one because it doesn't make sense for you to have we're not checking off the piece of paper that you're clearly already holding. And then the full inspection sheet is the 2-page, 1-page front and back. So they're actually not too much shorter between the abbreviated inspection and the full inspection. Oh, that did not work out great. Okay, apologies. So one of the things I want to make sure people are aware of is what tools do they need to do their own inspection. One, to weigh the robot, I recommend using a bathroom scale. Sorry about that. A bathroom scale, usually setting some boards across it to help you raise and mount that robot onto the bathroom scale. That being said, unless your robot is one of those ones pushing the 120 pounds, if you can't get an accurate measurement from the bathroom scale, but you're trying to figure out if it's like, 110 or to 115 or, 90, or even some robots come in 50 or 60, good enough. So unless you're really pushing that 120, do not spend an exorbitant amount of time and effort trying to make sure you have a perfectly calibrated scale that you can read. The goal is to make sure it's under 120. We're going to weigh you at the competition. And so we'll mark it off there. And we have a nice calibrated scale there that you have to get under the correct weight anyway. The second one, unfortunately, my tools didn't quite work. If you can find one of these fabric tape measures, they are absolutely fantastic for measuring your frame perimeter. 120 inches. A lot of them come only to 60 inches. Make sure you get the 120. They're about $3 on Amazon, or you can buy them at a craft store. They make your lives a lot easier, and these are kind of the ones we use in inspection. You can use a regular tape measure. You get a piece of string around the frame perimeter and then measure it out. It's just more steps. That being said, you also will need the tape measure to measure other things, height, how far out of the frame perimeter. Do you have any extensions, height of the bumpers, and so forth. I recommend you have a pen. That's usually how we measure gaps between bumpers, because it's roughly 1/4 of an inch. Jumper test cables, that's just if you have pneumatics to test a pneumatic relief valve. Though you don't have to get these nicer ones. Again, they're only a couple dollars though. You can just use a wire, or I have used a screwdriver to put across the two leads. Don't necessarily recommend it. If you have extra time or money, plumb bobs are great. They're these little weights that hang down from a string. You hang it down from a tall thing, it'll hang down and show you basically that vertical plane of where it is. A straight edge also works, but that's usually if you're trying to measure the height of something pretty tall, couple feet. And then a digital voltmeter to measure the frame isolation. Though 3 in red, the bathroom scale, tape measure, digital voltmeter, are really the only 3 required tools. And as I said, the bathroom scale, unless you're pushing that weight, we're just looking for an estimate for the pre-inspection. So you really only need a tape measure and a digital voltmeter. And if you don't have the digital voltmeter, that's one test. It's just for frame isolation. We can deal with that when you're there. Okay, my plan is to run through this inspection checklist so you can see where you're at. So this is section 1, which kind of covers the load-in weights, robot weights, frame perimeter, starting configuration, and all of these bumper rules. One thing to note when doing your own self-inspection, pre-inspection, you do not have to go in order. You can do these sections whenever order. Don't feel like you go through part way, oh, we can't do this any further, and stop. Again, if you think of it like a quiz, that's not how you would take a quiz because you're not going to get the most points out of it. Answer what you can, and then, leave what you can't. So robot weight, sorry, I said 120 earlier. I meant 125. I was thinking frame perimeter number. Bumper weights, those should be pretty easy to weigh. Those are less than 15 pounds. That you can have somebody hold them all on the scale and get that measure, that weight difference. Frame perimeter, I talked about. And you do need to make sure you can do the frame perimeter. That's one of the big ones. And one of the other ones, starting configuration, we are gonna check that, make sure you're all within the frame configuration for starting configuration. And that does means, in here, frame perimeter does not mean edge of the bumpers, the far end of the bumpers. You have to be inside. And then we have a lot of rules on the standard bumpers. Heights, just how well are they mounted? There is a lot of rules here, and they can be pretty picky. And this is purely because over the years, bumpers have been probably the hardest part, the main part of inspections that have had problems. So they keep trying to elaborate on the rules to make it clearer. So they keep trying to write more and more about it. As a result, we kind of get more and more rules. One I want to point out here, or there's 2 I want to point out here. One is the team number must be displayed in Arabic font to at least 4 inches tall, all that. And then they go into, as long as they're white numbers and are easily read from around the field so the refs can see them and not be confused on what your robot is, that's pretty much what we're looking at. Do not panic if yours are, 3 inches and 7, that little tiny bit. Do not redo your bumpers because of that little part. So some of these rules may seem very nuanced and picky. That one I definitely recommend just, kind of apply some of that common sense. That being said, if you go to championships and they feel it's hard to read, championships being Houston. The other one I wanted to talk about was the second to last one, where the bumpers must be securely mounted when attached and easily removable. And I want to talk about this one because securely mounted and easily removable are not hard metrics. What does securely mounted mean? That means if I shake the bumper, does the robot frame shake? If I shake the bumpers, if you shake the bumpers and only the bumpers shake and not the robot, it's not secure enough. Easily removable here, they have a blue box in the rules saying we recommend 2 minutes or 2 students under 5 minutes to remove and change those bumpers. Now, a lot of teams take that as we want to be able to change the colors of our bumpers in that amount of time to switch between colors. And that is very important for the match play and especially this competition, the one-day events, when you're going very quickly to your next match. However, in inspection and pre-inspections, you do have to take your bumpers off for the weight and the frame perimeter. And we also have to see them on. So try and not build your robot so it takes 30 minutes to take those bumpers off because you feel like you will never have to take them off again. You will have to take them off at the competitions. So we've had a number of teams that in the past that have definitely done we can change colors really quickly, but it took them 30 minutes to put their bumpers on and off because they only had to do it once, they thought. So we recommend a little bit quicker there because that's the inspections this time. We are very limited for time. And so typically in the past, the inspectors would try and hang out until the inspection was done. But if it's going to take more than 10 minutes to put on your bumpers, we're going to have to go on to the next team. And then you're going to have to go back into the inspection queuing list. Perfect. Okay, next section, mechanical. This one is pretty easy. No sharp edges, no prohibited materials, not a whole lot of, usually this is a pretty quick go down the list check marks. If you find you have sharp edges or protrusions of hazardous things, please, and you're going to file them, please put something over your electronics so you don't get metal files into your computer or electronics. If you do, you can vacuum it out. It's also not bad practice to just occasionally vacuum out that. It does kind of show up as kind of gremlins in the software and the robot just sporadically doesn't work quite right. One of the rules I do want to point out is the no risk or damage to the field. I don't believe we're going to see it this year, but previous years we have had teams that are low to the ground and then they have large bolts sticking out of the bottom of their robot just because they didn't get short enough bolts. They found long bolts, so their ends of the bolts were like 1/4 of an inch off the ground. That has the potential of damaging the field. We will look at it closely, and unfortunately, if it is very, very close, that's going to be a back and forth between the refs watching. We will inform the refs of, we think this one might be be on the lookout. If you notice the carpet tearing, this one might be a culprit. But our real goal is we don't want to have to stop any matches because the carpet got torn up too badly. We have to use the carpet for the competition, and we all want as much matches as we can get. So please just pay attention to that one. The bolts don't have to be flush with the bottom, just, try to have them a little bit off the ground. Okay. I doubt you guys can read this, but this is the electrical section. It can look a little bit daunting, but most of them are pretty straightforward actually going through the checklist. And actually, I should have mentioned this before, but after each of the major lines, you'll see like R61 1.2, if I read that correctly, that tells you exactly which robot rule it is referring to. So not only do you have our quick cheat sheet of here's what we're looking for, you can then look in the manual and see exactly what that rule is. And if you believe yours meets that, you can then, go and look it up and then, argue with the robot inspector on why this, no, here's how we read it and this is why we're right. We're good with that. So most of these to me are pretty straightforward, only a single main robot battery. You can have some other ones, little ones like camera batteries. The main things I want to point out here are the main breaker accessibility, because it's the phrasing of this one is the single 120 amp main breaker must be quickly and safely accessible with the robot being run, capable of being hit. And that's kind of one of those other vague, what does that mean? How easy is easily hit? And so I want to just, if you can hit it while running away from your robot, that's quick enough. And then also large labels help other people. And then there's a few other things. And I want to just skip down to the bottom because I'm going slow on time. Frame isolation. Use a digital voltmeter, set it to that beep mode, and take the battery out. Check the battery terminals, make sure it's isolated. The frame's not connected to your wires. If you have 80/20 or extruded aluminum, use a cut side because sometimes they have a plastic anodized coating on them. That'll prevent it. Okay, and this is when I and many inspectors start to really go through quickly on the inspection. So pneumatic section. If you don't have pneumatics, just cross out this section. It's very satisfying to cross out the entire inspection. This whole section, it's very nice. Pneumatics are kind of one of those finicky ones. Gauges should be easy to read. That's not just for us. And then a note I have is if your pneumatic systems, if you're having problems passing inspections with pneumatics and you're getting close to a match, pneumatics is one of those systems that we can take out the breaker and say, okay, pneumatics are just added weight to this robot right now and you're not using them. Then we can pass your robot without pneumatics. And then you can come back and we can recontinue the inspection for those pneumatic portions. So, I mean, that's up to the team to decide whether you want to continue, play the match without pneumatics or play it with. That's your guys' decisions, but just want to let you know that is an option for the pneumatic section. It's the only section of that inspection list that can intentionally be skipped. At which point we say your pneumatics are ballast, and we tell the refs, and if any of us see you using pneumatics without having passed, then you're in trouble. But it is an option. Okay. Power on section. This is the last section of the inspection list. You have to be tethered, so have a cable ready. And then the other fun one is the pneumatics relief pressure, the relief valve for the compressor. It has to be set to 125. And that can be a really kind of annoying one to check if you have all questions about how to do that. There is if you see R811, there's a blue box which has a link to a manual which says how to do it to adjust these typical relief valves you see. This is another one I would say do not spend too much time or heartache doing. If this is the only part of the inspection list, that weight that isn't done, we can get that knocked out very quickly. Oh yeah, and always double check the inspection checklist for an updated version of these software versions. Cool. So those are the pre-inspections. That's the checklist we go through. That's what we're looking for. And for one-day events, we expect to have a self-inspection or pre-inspection list able to be turned in. Yeah, so if you do pre-inspection, you'll get that checklist and make sure you leave with the checklist so you can turn it in. Or if you bring your own self-inspection one, those are both needed. That's step one of the inspection list. If you don't have that, we're probably going to turn around and say, okay, here's the sheet, do your own self-inspection, and then come back. So I wanted to point out some of the most common inspection issues we see, and it is bumpers. Usually the robots look gorgeous and they're great. It's usually the bumpers that give us problems. Number 5, size weight. That's just a really hard one to fix at competition. it's a time-consuming fix, and we don't have that this year. 6, insecure battery attachment. That's one that can, if the battery kind of falls out, we're always kind of very cautious because it can lead to field damage if the battery breaks, at which point pretty much the competition is stopped for a bit until, we clean up the battery spill. It is not a pleasant delay. So please make sure they're installed. If the robot, I think the rule is any orientation, the battery has to remain inside. So make sure there's a cover on it. So if you're flipped upside down, it's not going anywhere. A lot of times that power switch button is not easy to hit. I'm not entirely sure on this one, but I think Chesapeake, we might be one of the only districts or regions that has actually had a robot manage to escape the field like 5 years ago, where we actually had to hit that. There was a series of weird, weird circumstances, but we have had a robot actually manage to leave the field. So we're a little bit, we've seen how nice it is to actually have a robot that has a nice off switch that when it needs to. Wrong software versions and driver stations. Driver station software, it's often just a looked over part of the inspection. Like we don't overlook it, sorry. It's just a part that no one's quite prepared for. That we actually do need to check these things. And then a lot of times for inspections, but this won't be a problem for your self-inspections, missing the right student who knows how to answer the questions. And then pneumatics is usually. Okay, as a reminder, 2022 differences. It's much faster, much fewer people, more back-to-back matches. So this is just kind of how the gameplay is going to be. And mostly the bottom one, have you done your self-inspection checklist? That is the 2-page, 1-page front and back checklist. We do have week 0 pre-inspection events. These are great if you are concerned about doing your own self-inspection, or if you want to be taught how to do an inspection by robot inspectors. We would love to show you how to do this so you can do it next year on your own. These robot inspection checklists are usually 95% the same from year to year. So if you can learn how to do it this year, it'll serve you very well in the future. I believe there's signups on the First Chesapeake site, but we do have, that's 2 p.m. DC and then one in Glen Allen, Virginia. So week 0 events. That's all I have. Questions, comments, concerns?
While we wait for questions, I just have a question for you. Do teams need to do this self-inspection at the competition, or can they do it beforehand?
Please do it beforehand. It'll save you guys time. It'll save time. Then you can get in line for the inspections a lot sooner. So.
And then just a follow up to that, what if a team can't finish the self-inspection because they don't understand what they're asking for, they don't have the tools, or just didn't have the time to complete it?
If you haven't started it, we're going to ask you to start it at the competition. And you're not going to be able to get really kind of into the queue with the inspectors until you've completed it pretty much to the best of your ability, which we do expect you to be able to do quite a large portion of that. Like I said, if there's a few things that do not make sense, specifically that pneumatic relief valve, we didn't have a scale, the frame isolation, those, if you have just a few little ones like here and there, you're like, I didn't understand this one, we can help you at the competition. Let's the lead robot inspector or the inspector manager know that you need to have help with that. And usually I think we'll probably just, depending on what it is, roll it into the inspection if we know just how much there is to do. Cool.
Do you have any tips for rookie teams, or like this is the first time they're playing with these new 2022 updates, I guess? Do you have any like specific tips that teams want to keep in mind, or as they're working on their robot, or when they're doing inspections?
I mean, I have a lot of tips. One of them, it's a little late now to say don't build to all of the margins. Try to keep everything a little bit under. Don't shoot for, exactly 120 inches frame per by making every side 30, 30, 30, 30. But I mean, so inspections, if you don't understand something, just ask the inspection team. We're there to make sure everyone is safe, gets through and has a good time and gets your robot to play. Our goal is not to prevent robots from playing. It's just to make sure everything is safe and everyone's playing by the same rule book. Yeah, if you have any questions, just come talk to us. Yeah. I think I saw a question saying what's frame isolation? What do I mean by frame isolation? That is making sure your electronics are not grounding to your robot frame, the actual metal chassis.
Okay, and the next question is, will there be other pre-inspection options, like remote options or other locations and other dates than the ones that you have listed?
At this point in time, we don't have other ones planned out. We've had a number of people who have tried the virtual inspections, and they have kind of been very difficult for both the team and the inspector to actually see what is going on. That being said, I'm okay with sharing my email of if people have concerns of like, what about this? And they can take pictures of their robots and show that. I think we can try and figure out that. I know Chief Delphi, there's a lot of inspectors on Chief Delphi. Yeah, so I don't know that there's going to be other ones, but as I said, most of this, the pre-inspection is to get help with the being able to do your own self-inspection. And you don't need your whole team there. You know, you can send some people, and I would say even if you don't have your robot ready, send a mentor so they can learn how to do inspections. Then they can go and do it themselves. There'll hopefully be some robots there. I think we have a bunch of teams already signed up, so as long as they're okay with other teams learning from their robots, I don't see that being a problem. But we will see as the weeks progress. But
Okay, seeing as there are no more questions, I would like to thank today's speaker, Dr. Kate, for being here with us today. And I would also like to thank again our First Chesapeake Chat sponsors, Newport News Shipbuilding, for their generous support of this program and our 2022 First Chesapeake District Championship. Please enjoy this short video about them.